And so from Florida, we go to Illinois and to another Karen. Hi, Karen. How may we help you?
Hi. I just found out 3 months ago that my husband was in an emotional relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and he had lost his job 3 years ago, and he had been there over 20 years and getting very depressed. He started a new job and was thrown into a bad situation of being a doomsayer, having to let all people go, budget cuts, and that made him even more depressed. And he turned to a coworker for help.
Mm-hmm.
And in turn, they are in an emotional relationship now.
Mm.
So this happened a year ago, and I found out about it 3 months ago. And now he says it's about him. He's depressed. He has to figure out why he's depressed, why he did what he did before he thinks about our marriage. And in the meantime, I have to sit back and wait and hurt and have all these unanswered questions. I almost felt it was a limerence state because he cut me off. He detached from me. He almost said negative things a lot, just little digs all the time, which hurt. And he doesn't see that he did that. He says the reason he stepped out of our marriage because I was not submissive enough to him throughout our lifetime, which we've been married for over 25 years.
Hmm.
Well, that's his excuse to me for what he did. But he says it's about him until he figures himself out. I thought I had him talking to go in one of your classes for your 3-day course that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now he's said he's only seen a counselor 3 times, which I forced him to go. And she says it's not time for him to think about marriage. He has to think about himself. I didn't know if the class would help him be more aware of his personal issues, what he's going with, or where I should start. Where should I push being a marriage counselor?
Kimberly actually was a great deal of the way through her degree of marriage counseling, marriage and family therapy, and a master's, and changed over to psychology. I'd love to hear your response to this question.
Oh, me. So, well, Karen, so my response is I don't think the counselor should get to make the decision of what your husband gets to do or not to do, because there's just so much going on here. To answer your question, our workshop would be incredibly beneficial to your husband personally, on a personal level. The majority of what our workshop teaches gives a great deal of introspection into a person. People leave all the time who didn't want to come and say, I learned more about myself than I ever have in my life. I understand why I've done the things that I've done, why I feel the things that I'm feeling. And they get more insight out of that, which is why many counselors refer their people to us, because they know that during that 3 days, we are going to be able to teach and give a ground layer of understanding that would take, counselors have told us, 9 months to be able to accomplish that same amount of movement if they were just going to counseling. And so when we hear things like counselors telling people, you don't need to focus on the marriage, you only need to focus on yourself, all it does is give your husband a cop-out. If that's what the husband said to your or if that is actually what the counselor said to your husband and he's not just hearing it the way he wants to hear it, it ends up just giving a cop-out. And so, we recommend absolutely a counselor who knows our workshop would absolutely recommend your husband in that kind of situation to attend our workshop. I don't know if that's what you expected me to say, but that is...
No, that is helpful. I do feel like I need to push him more. But he says I'm not taking ownership in my part of what happened. But even after he lost his job, we had sex, he still loved me, he still acted like it. But then when he took on this new job and is around this other person, that's when I saw the big difference. But he's blaming me, and he's allowing that to be his excuse for what he did.
And he said this because you were not submissive? Is that what he said?
Yeah. I had 3 kids in 4 years, and no, I was not a submissive wife. I nursed all 3. Then I started having a lot of female problems, and ultimately ended up having a hysterectomy. And
but what does he mean when he says you were not submissive? What's he talking about?
He wanted to have sex more, and
Okay.
So
he
sexually
says I
submissive.
turned him away.
Okay. He wanted to have sex more, but you had physical problems, and therefore you were denying the sexual contact because of your
Yeah.
physical ailments.
Yeah.
Don't you think that's reasonable?
Right.
Do you think that's reasonable?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. And I should have been more submissive to him, but I did not meet his needs. I went through part of depression, and
Okay.
I told him I should have done a lot better, and I do own that.
Okay.
I allowed my personal problems to become more of a forefront than his.
Okay.
Were you saying that he was being reasonable or she was being reasonable?
I'm saying that if you deny sexual activity because of the fact that you are dealing with depression or you're dealing with a physical malady,
Right.
then that's very reasonable.
Right.
And so if a husband or a wife is demanding, I need you to fulfill me sexually when the other person can't.
Right.
And it's not because they're refusing, like I'm refusing you. It's like, I have a problem that I need to deal with.
Yeah, I think she heard it the other way.
Oh, I see.
So I
Okay.
wanted to, because I didn't think that's how you were asking it.
No,
That's not.
well, thank you for
that doesn't
correcting
sound like
that.
you.
I really didn't mean to. And so the bottom line here is I think the question you were asking is, okay, what do you do while he's figuring himself out? You don't have to be in full of anxiety and worry and thinking, oh my goodness, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? There's some things that you can do, and we teach those on our website. We teach those in our programs and et cetera. And we recommend that you do those things. But please don't hold on you the full responsibility for putting this back together.
Right.
This is where two people have to work on themselves. He has to work on himself, and you work on yourself. And so you've admitted, this is where I think I've let you down. That's a good thing to do. But don't take full responsibility for what's happening here. Because if you do, you're going to wind up thinking that you're useless, that you're no good, that you're unlovely or unlovable. And that's the worst thing you can do, is start thinking of yourself as being, I'm the problem here.
Yeah, and another quick thing to note, and this is good for anyone listening, is don't send your spouse to a marriage counselor that is going to end up doing the opposite of what you're wanting to happen. And it's, I mean, a lot of times you can't control that. You can't know, you can't, I mean, but just understand that there are pros and cons to counseling, and that not every marriage counselor is pro-marriage. Not every marriage counselor is going to see things the way that we at Marriage Helper see things, maybe the way that you see things. And so just be sure that before you ask your spouse to do anything to get help for your marriage, that you are confident of that source and that you are confident that it's going to be good for your marriage beforehand. I mean, if your husband's going to go see an individual counselor just to work on his issues, that's one thing. But if they're going to start giving advice about the marriage, just vet that
Yeah, beforehand,
beforehand.
if at all possible.
beforehand.